Hello everyone and welcome into today's video. I've got to thank you for clicking on this, and also you better stick with this one. Even though it's not what I'm known for, I have had a very long love affair with Native American Indian artifacts, and I started collecting when I was about 8 years old. I think the first one I ever purchased was like $3. It was at a gun show with my father. And what else was a young child supposed to do? But I wanted to collect things even early on. And so some of the earliest things that I remember buying and keeping were Indian artifacts and Native American stone implements, not just necessarily arrowheads, but blades and pieces that were field found, especially in Ohio. So this is a Victorian jewelry box. I purchased this out of an estate in, I believe it was considered Southern Ohio. I don't remember what county it was at the time, but it was an auction, an estate auction, and the box is really beautiful. I wish I could get the whole thing in the frame, but it has this beautiful clasp on the front. I don't want to tip it too much because there are a lot of very beautiful and early stone implements on the inside, and let's take a look. What I loved about this collection is that it's basically from Ohio. The counties were all mixed. There is no provenance on exactly what counties some of these Indian artifacts came from, and the stone implements at the time. A very diverse grouping of Ohio chert and flint. I don't know exactly if I'm going to get into exactly what stones these are, because the variables in flint need to be addressed in another video. But why I wanted to show this is I have never talked about my Indian artifacts before, and I just wanted to do a quick unboxing of one of the several collections that I bought in its entirety. All of these are field finds or field found, meaning these were found by hand by a farmer or this elderly gentleman that was, he had collected for, I believe they said he looked in fields for over 52 years. He would walk the fields, mainly in Ohio. Sometimes he went into West Virginia with one of his family members, and it was also known to go into Indiana. When we look at these and we study these, the way that these were constructed and the way that these were knapped and the technique that was used and the honesty of the surface, you just know that these have been around for thousands and thousands of years. In this specific box, the ages vary between around, at the oldest piece in here, I believe, is around 9,000 years old. I think the very newest piece is around maybe, let's say, 3,000 years old, or maybe 2,500 years old as the newest piece in this specific collection. I was part of a few of the different collecting guilds from time to time throughout my college years, and I also was going to take up archaeology in college, and then I just decided not to. I believe this chert is from Ohio. We start to see that little vein here of almost what they consider Nelly blue chert. Probably like Upper Mercer or Coshocton. That's just my best guess. There are so many people out there that know so much more than me, and I just simply don't want to be corrected in my videos. I don't consider it kind to go around correcting everyone, and then especially when you're not holding these pieces in your hand, and when, you know, everyone has an opinion on things, is what I will say. I just wanted to show you this collection because this has been with me for quite a few years, and what I loved is the diversity of these stones. Look at the diversity of the forms of these pieces, and let's also cover the fact of a true arrowhead. When people see this shape, when they see the shape of the implement, they immediately say, well, these are arrowheads. These are considered arrowheads. There's nothing wrong with that term because they are shaped like an arrowhead. these are too large to be anything to do with arrowheads. These were blades. Most were used for cutting, most for used for preparing food, cutting things apart, because these edges are so very sharp and so napped so finely. This is definitely translucent flint, because you can almost see through part of it. Very beautifully modeled in that light gray. So let's talk about this. In this box, there is Upper Mercer or Coshocton chert. There might be Nellie Blue. There's definitely Brush Creek chert from southern Ohio, which is like that buff color. But then again, there's a variable in that as well. Cambridge chert, Dover chert, and of course Flint Ridge. The more jeweled tones and the more pinks. Of course, Flint Ridge is not only my personal favorite, but so many people love Flint Ridge, Ohio, Flint Ridge, Flint. They just love it. Then when you talk about Upper Mercer County, there's two basic kinds. There's from Pottsville and Allegheny. So there is a lot of variables that go into the stones, and we're not going there today. This is the first time I have brought on any of my ancient artifacts that I've purchased over the last now 32 years of my life. And very devoted to it. This is considered a celt. This is a celt, and it's beautifully ground. It almost has a lustrous finish on it, but you can see that this was used. You can see that this was smoothed down by using and having it in the hand. And you can almost see the hand of the person on these tools. Can you not see that? Can you not see the hand of that person in ancient times? Unbelievable finish on this one. And these, they range in prices. They're between, on something like this, again, everyone has their own opinion, 85 to 175, and that's a big range, but it depends on the stone, it depends on the origin, depends on the condition and the size, also the polish. I do have a celt in my collection that I was offered over $700 for, and I declined. I just simply said, no, I'm not doing it. This potentially could be Flint Ridge material. It's possible. Do I know for sure? No, I don't. But you could almost see that this was buried for so long, because you have those micro deposits over the, thousands of years, and the freeze and the thaw of that being in the ground in Ohio. Thousands of years of freezing and thawing, and that would alleviate any of those cleavage points or the little hinges, because they call like an area where the stone is chipped away a hinge. Well, if this had hinges on it, I'd be alarmed. I'd be terrified that this could be new. Absolutely not, after thousands of years of being in the ground and having the freeze thaw and water getting under those hinged areas and popping that off if there ever was hinges in place. All those thousands of years of freeze and thaws. There's many pieces in my collection because I loved collecting things that were in rivers and in water. You can see that by the finish of the pieces. You can feel that when these are in your hand. This is considered more of like a Lancelot or a lance. That's definitely the form that this starts to take on. Some people will say a spearhead. I don't think so on this particular blade. Again, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and don't go around correcting everybody. Not fair, not cool. It makes collecting not cool, but I'm willing to learn every day of my life, and by no means am I an expert in any field, specifically in Native American points and flints and artifacts. But I wanted to show you these beautifully modeled pieces, and look at the way this was chipped away, and then the big strokes of getting that honed down into a very thin I should be showing you the profile of these pieces because they're very thin. Can you imagine that surviving the blades of a plow going through the fields and churning the soil? That's why this is broken off. That's why the tip is broken off. Someone else, as a purist collector, may not keep this. I did because it's still sacred to me and it still felt right. And it was part of this bigger collection. It also was a great example of this specific stone and this specific flint. So that's why I kept, I tried to keep the collections together and not really sell off very much. We had looked at this earlier. Let me show you a few points before we get too far in. I'd like to keep your attention in these videos, and I'm not going to stay on too much longer. This is from Montgomery County, Ohio, and this is considered a Thieves. The Thieves style blades or artifacts were some of my favorites. And I always put my money where my mouth was because I wanted the best I could find. I wanted ones that were complete with like those extended dog ears. Look at that moss-like surface that had grown onto this. And the deep twist of a Thieves. When you see that deep twist on the axis of a Thieves, that really gets me going because of seeing that resharpened over time and beveling that edge. Look at that Nelly blue again. Electric blue on black for CHERT/FLINT. Likely Mercer. Not exactly sure on that for origin, but again, I didn't want to overly clean that. I just wanted to leave it be, but you can tell inside here that that is in fact ancient. And look at that big, thick base that's been ground down, this is just incredible. So I loved that one. We'll move that out of the way. Also, one that, every collector really wants in their collection is a dovetail. And I'm going to tell you, of all the dovetails I've ever personally seen, I've seen thousands of them, and I've never seen one in my shopping out in the field. I've never seen one that was correct. And I just so happened upon this one, and it has been authenticated by several different experts, and they said it's absolutely correct. It's believed to be from Ohio. We're not exactly sure on county or origin, but this is considered a dovetail. This is considered a dovetail, and it's a very large version. It does have some wear to the tip. Of course it does. Very beautifully modeled as well with that flint napped surface. And look how honest that is for a surface that's been around for thousands of years. This is the only authentic dovetail that I own, but I wanted to bring that on. We can bring this into future videos as well. And then we're going to get into this one. And I think we'll not do any more that were select pieces. We'll go back to the box. But this is considered, again, it's considered a Thieves. And some people say it's a hybrid because of the shape of it, but this is also considered a Thieves. This is from Montgomery County, Ohio, and it is Coshocton Chert. It's been authenticated as such and certified as such. Montgomery County, Ohio, in very old and early lettering from the previous collector. Look at the size of this and the form of this. That's what got me going. What got me going was the size, the shape, and also this has remained complete and not broken off. Can you imagine that surviving the plow of a field and not being completely beaten up and chipped beyond recognition? Look at that honest surface. No hinges, no little areas where that stone has the little pockets underneath. You'll see a lot of hinges in reproductions. And this is very finely, almost serrated on the outside. Look at that. That gave that a cutting point, if you will, or a cutting edge, I should say. Absolutely incredible to think that these things kept people alive. Almost a needle-like tip right on the top of that as well. That was the inventory code from the previous collection, and I do have 2 certifications on that for authentication. Also, be careful with COAs. I have seen so many fake COAs. By no means am I an expert in this field, but I've seen tons of fake COAs, and so many dealers and so many people that deal in points and artifacts have seen it as well. Look how early this one is. You can just tell this has been around for thousands of years. Again, field found, likely in Ohio. Look at that, how incredible. Looks to be an ancient chip there, and then possibly a more contemporary chip there. But you can see that that little notch had been out for a long time because it oxidized over. Let's go in and look at the surface so you can see an honest surface on a very early flint artifact. Look at the size of that as well. Absolutely exceptional. Of course, the base is broken off, been broken for a long time. And I didn't mind. I still think it's an exceptional example. Would I prefer to see this hole? Sure. Would I have been spending thousands on it if it was? Yes. Now, when they talk about a heat or a pockmark from where it's been heated if flint had been through a fire. That is what they speak of. See how that dips down in? Like there was that little air pop that popped that out of there. So that could have been through a fire at some point. We'll talk more about that in coming videos for sure. Look how finely done this is, and that really beautiful semi-translucent stone. Just absolutely exquisite that it had the tip on there as well. I could get lost in these for days. And I don't know, there's just something about touching these things that brings me back to, I don't want to say a distant memory, but these feel very familiar once they're in your hands. You almost feel our ancestors and our people that spanned before us that used such stone implements to survive, for basic life sustenance. And they're remarkable technology when you think about getting this figured out of how to create this, to have those cutting edges. Another person wouldn't have kept this, but I love the stemmed base on this. Unfortunately, really damaged. That could have been ancient damage as well, and then used until it was totally expired. What surprised me is because this was so strong here, surprised me that they didn't reshape this in ancient times, because so many times you might look at a point or a blade and say, well, that looks out of proportion. Well, it is because it was re-napped and reformed. People have asked me frequently, have you found your own arrowhead? And the answer is yes. So just before COVID times, when we were on lockdown, I had decided to reach out to my friend Mike, and who looked for arrowheads almost every day of his life. And I said, Mike, could I go with you one of these times and fulfill a childhood dream of finding my own arrowhead or flint artifact? And he said, absolutely. So just before lockdown, and a lot during lockdown is why I mentioned it. When we weren't allowed to do anything else and we were locked away in our homes, I went out in the fields. I went to Wadsworth, Medina, and Summit County. Those were my stomping grounds, and I found some exceptional examples, and it takes a long time to find them. I could walk a field for upwards to maybe 10 hours a day, and I may not have found anything but little flint flakes and little flint points. They're very difficult to find sometimes. And then sometimes you'll walk out, and I remember the one day I just was feeling lucky, and I went out to, it's towards Norton, Ohio, and it's a large farm, and it was Farmer Dan's property, and I would pull in with my car, and he would just kind of shrug, he'd be on his tractor, and he'd kind of shrug his shoulders like, oh, here's this crazy city guy again, wanting to look for arrowheads on my property, and he just flagged me on, because you always have to ask for permission, and he flagged me on and said, go ahead, whatever you find, you keep, he's such a polite and kind man, and he knew it was a childhood dream, And he didn't mind at all, as long as we weren't walking the fields that were planted, and, destroying crops, But he's a pleasant man. And I just stepped out of the car that day, and I literally stepped onto a very small woodland point. I don't know, several thousand years old, nothing monumental. Maybe in resale it was like $10, or $15. I had felt like I won the lottery. I looked down like, I can't believe I'm seeing this, and then I picked it up, like, it was still stuck into the ground, and I picked it up, and it just was amazing that I was the first human to touch that over all those thousands of years, and that connection and that energy and that charge just is like a feeling money can't buy that. We a lot of times fulfill our desires by buying things. That was a feeling you can't buy. That was a situation that was just magical. I will never forget that. I'm smiling because I remember, the feeling very vividly. And then, in Summit County, I found a very beautiful paleo blade, approximately 10,000 years old, and it had to have been in, Mud Run. Had to have been in the Mud Run Creek, because I found it very close to there, where there was a golf course where they were doing a development. And I'd called, of course, the developer, friend of a friend, and I said, "Do you mind if I go look?" And he said, "Nope, stay out of the way of, any, problems there. If you have any issues or, please show up, just have them call me. I'll, approve you onto the grounds. It's no problem." And I got very lucky, and I found that very close, very, very close, on the very cusp of the property where the ancient waterway once ran through, and the paleo blade had been in the river for it could have been thousands of years, that it had water running over it, because the finish on it is definitely, riverbed finish, per se, very highly polished. Look at the glassiness of this one. Absolutely beautiful for flint. Is it Flint Ridge? More than likely, because of the strong kind of crystalline pattern right there. Again, there's no reason to have this because it's just so incredibly expired, but there was an energy and a flow in this that I had to keep this. I needed that example of that stone as well. Could you imagine if that was whole and if it was large? That'd be $600 or $700 to an advanced collector to have that quality of flint in an artifact. Thank you again for joining in. I so appreciate it. Not sure origin on this one, but look how complete again. Absolutely loved the simplicity of form on that. I should have put these on like a black background of some sort. We may not get through the whole box, but I'm going to at least pedal a little bit faster. I'm not going to make any comments on this stone because I simply don't know. I simply am not sure. But again, I'm going to do some further research on some of these. And the book that I use. So when I say the term Indian, that's exactly what these are. These are Native American, and people are changing it to the indigenous people. That's fine. But when you look at an informational guide or a price guide or where these items come from, they are titled Indian Artifacts, Best of the Midwest. It says right on the book. Indian Artifacts, Best of the Midwest, Identification and Value Guide. I always trusted and always believed Lar Holtham's book. So Lar, L-A-R, and then Holtham, A-H-O-T-H-E-M. And the one that I used is titled Indian Artifacts, Best of the Midwest. And that's the one that really helps me out because I really focus my collection on Ohio. Sometimes, as I've discussed before, these tribes were slightly transient. I actually found an arrowhead in Summit County that was from Onondaga. It was Onondaga Chert from Pennsylvania. It was like 300 miles away. The original quote mine for the stone was 300 miles away from where I found it. These people traveled. They were, they didn't just stay in their state border. These people were transient, most. And then we could talk about woodland, and then you have the invasive mounds tribes as well. So, which I don't know, do they have any other names but invasive mound, builders? This one definitely is the heat mark again. You can see where there was like crystalline formation done in there, and then when this heated, that like popped out. It was a fire pop. So that is like a little smoothed out surface that when that was heated, it had the pop, and it popped that circular kind of stone area out of there. So I do not have any idea the chert on that one. Now, if someone out there is watching at the 24-minute mark, if you know exactly what this is, please let me know. I would love to know what stone that is, because I have no idea. On these other ones, I have some pretty good ideas. Coshocton is most of what we see in these collections, just like this. And look at the way that one's modeled as well. The forms of these, the energy off of these, I could just go on and on. So I'll show you a few more in the bottom of the box, and then we can call it, because I don't think I gave enough information in this. I really don't think so. And like I said, this is the first time getting into one of these boxes, so I hope you've stayed with this. I hope you have stayed here with me. And then, this just keeps going and going. Look at some of these, how beautiful. Again, not whole. The bottom is broken off. But I love the nature of these stones. I think this could be, I forget what they call these. Oh, here I go. Is it a blunt? It might be a blunt. I don't remember what the term was. I think that's what that is. And it looks like Indiana hornstone on that one. But again, I'm not going to make that claim. Never figured out why this was in here. But this is definitely very interesting, to say the least. Especially with that toggle that goes through the center of that. Not sure why that is in this box. But again, it was part of the collection, so I left it in here. Here's another salt, but this one's slightly more beat up. I think you could say that one would be in the vicinity of maybe 50 or 60. You might be able to get 75 for it from a collector. Very beautifully finished, but not as handsome as that earlier version. So we'll sneak that out of the way on this side of the box. Don't know on this one. Not sure. Don't know what they were going for. Definitely hand altered. That's not Mother Nature. You'll see some of these things on the ground and you'll look at it and say, well, that doesn't belong. That doesn't look like a natural stone. It's because it's not. A definite hand had altered that. That almost goes into a pentagonal. Almost starts to go pentagonal on that one. And that looks like Upper Mercer because that white kind of streaks through it. Lightning bolts or streaks. Not sure on this one. Don't know what we've got going on here. Don't know if that's still not a natural formation. Don't know. Not exactly sure, but it's in here for a reason. And that farmer definitely knew to pick it up. Said that doesn't belong in my field. But some of these smaller points, really beautifully modeled. Does this go? No, that's not more pentagonal. But this box is incredible as well. The box itself is just an absolute beauty for a Victorian jewelry box. And for anyone that loves early boxes like I do, I didn't necessarily want to keep all of these stones in here, but guess what? I also didn't want to move them out of here. That's what they came in, so that's what I'm leaving them in. This is some sort of core, I think. I think that's more of a core or a preform. It might be a thumb scraper. Some people call these thumb scrapers. Yeah, it fits in the thumb quite right. See how that's not created by Mother Nature? That was created by a human hand. Look how a thumb fits in there. Are you kidding me? But that's probably a thumb scraper, because look at the edge. That was probably a thumb scraper, because look, it fits perfectly in the hand. And when you touch these things, people have said to me, how did you know reproductions from not? And I said, oh, the amount of reproductions I bought probably was just as much as old ones. But when you got into an auction situation like this, that this was estate fresh, that this wasn't put together, with a ton of fakes in it. You could tell that these have been around a long time. And then to find a fossil to find the fossil clamshell. I mean, come on, you just know that this is, look at the finish and the dirt and the oxidation on the surface of all of these. It's very similar. When you look over the field of these, it's very similar. And what surprised me is the size of some of these, to find some of these so complete with their tips. But again, we'll do another video on maybe form. Maybe I'll have a couple experts come on with me. There's a gentleman named Skeeter who's in the lapidary group where I go, and he is just amazing. He is so genius when it comes to these things because he finds his own, he researches, he's a genius when it comes to it. And you can trust someone like that if they're not actively selling, a lot of people like to upsell and sell fakes because they can. This is a celt that is remarkable. I would say on this celt, this is more along lines of about 200, 185 to 250. I'm not very current on values with Native American implements and artifacts, but look at the polish of that edge. See how grainy this is? And then look at the polish of where that was used as a celt. Really fits in the hand right. Fits in the hand right. Absolutely right. I have a gouge that is, it's ancient. It's an ancient gouge, and would be made to carve out of like a boat, a canoe, a wooden, hollow out a wooden vessel. They're very hard to find, and I have an authentic one. It's very large. I think it's 9.5 inches. Look at the serration on that one. Are you kidding me? See, like that's, I would never sell this. It may not be worth that much. What is that worth? Let's say $25 to $35. There'd be no way. There's simply no way. I just wouldn't sell it. I would say, I'm sorry, it's not for sale. It's simply not for sale. I hope this has piqued your interest in other parts of my Native American stone implements and my Indian tools and flint artifacts. I thank you so much for joining in. And usually when I store these, I don't customarily store these like this because I don't like them touching each other. But after all, they've been in the ground for thousands of years. So how are they really going to be hurt unless you hit them together? So I will go ahead and put these back in here with some tissue paper in between so they'll be safe. Usually I use the Riker mounts with the foam. I did buy a collection from a gentleman that hunted fields for arrowheads for over 50 years. And he hunted strictly in Hartville, Ohio. So if you want to see that collection, I think it's like 15 or 16 trays, Rikers, that are completely filled with his farm finds. And I did get an incredibly early, very important stone implement in that collection that's worth an extreme amount of money. So if you would like to see that collection, please let me know in the comments section. Thank you for joining in. I appreciate your time and your attention. Thank you to all of my new subscribers, and thank you to all of my adoring people that have been with me since the start. I love you because I do.